It's time to strap in and get ready for the front stretch. Presented by Joe's Karting. Dan and Dirk are live in the studio today, ready to hear from you at 402-573-0590.
Good morning to you, race fans. Good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to the front stretch presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. Fast-paced white-knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs. Get over to Joe's today. Even though it is Father's Day, it's a great opportunity for fathers and sons to maybe get a little bragging rights for the next year, whether it be the son whooping up on the father or the father laying the smackdown on the son. Somebody's got to be victorious. You can do it at Joe's Karting, and you can brag about it for at least the next year, maybe longer.
And coming to you live this morning, thanks to Archer Purdue Used Cars in Millard. 14227 S Street, right across Millard Avenue from the Amazing Pizza Machine. And yes, we're going to send them a bill. We're going to start helping out Archer Purdue.
I do appreciate everybody joining us this morning. I learned a valuable lesson while getting ready for this morning's show. Much like many drivers, please don't show up to the racetrack late. Nothing goes right, and I barely got my my ducks in a row before the microphone was turned on. But we're going to have a great show lined up for you today. We do appreciate everybody joining us again. Anthony Ainsle is set to come on the show in turn number one. He's going to recap the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series results from Lakeside, and don't quote me on this, but I believe they were down at Adams County Speedway.
That's correct. Races 7 and 8 for them.
Right as I said that, I thought, was it Shelby County? Have they been there? I can't remember quite yet. So, yes, thank you for that. Adams County Speedway, they were down there last night, so we'll get results from that. And then coming up in turn number two, we sat down with the new track president for Iowa Speedway, David Hyatt. He was fun to talk to.
Great talk. You guys are really going to enjoy it. A lot of good info.
Okay, so let me give you a little quick. We talked to him for about 26 minutes. Then we hightailed it back to Omaha, and I went and worked at Eagle last night. And I was able to do that because the track decided to start an hour late because of the heat. So everything worked out great. Unfortunately, I got a little cut happy when I got home last night at 2 o'clock in the morning / this morning / 5 or 6 hours ago. And I may have cut a little more out of that interview than I needed to. It's about half as long, 13 minutes, but there's still a lot of great content in there. David did a fantastic job, and we're really excited to talk to him more often.
There wasn't that many does and us in there.
I know. I got back to us. I was thinking about it as I was drifting off to sleep 2.5 hours ago. I thought, I may have cut a little much. But it was a little too late for me to go back and redo it. But we're just going to have to live with 13 minutes of glory rather than 20 minutes of glory.
But it was great for him to sit down and talk to us in his first weekend at the Speedway.
And I think there's big things on the horizon for Iowa Speedway, including I think we're just another step closer to that C word coming to Iowa Speedway. It's still a tough road. It is a very tough road. But I think we're one step closer, and I think it's because of the ISC connection that he mentions. I think he might have the strings to pull to be able to get that race, but in order to get it, somebody's got to lose it. So that's the tough thing. Anyways, coming up in turn number two, David Hyatt, track president for Iowa Speedway. Turn three, we sat down with a Midwest native, St. Louis, Missouri native, Spencer Boyd. Grew up in St. Louis. We're going to talk to Spencer for about 10 or 15 minutes about his time in St. Louis, racing around locally, and then flying back and forth from North Carolina. Eventually, the family decided to make the move, go over to North Carolina full-time. So we'll talk to Spencer about his trip from Bandoleros and Legends and late models.
Started in shifter carts.
Carts, and then on his way up to making his Xfinity Series debut at Iowa Speedway in 2016, and then he's racing today at the Iowa 250 presented by Inogene, and that's going on today at Iowa Speedway. Again, iowaspeedway.com for tickets and information. Turn number four, we will get you set to go for any last-minute do's and don'ts, get you all set for the rest of the week to come, and some races this weekend that you need to put on your calendar. But before we get started, we got to say a fond farewell to a good race fan.
Well, unfortunately, we've got a couple of them. First of all, happy Father's Day to everybody out there. It's a day you get to celebrate that. But we lost a local, almost a legend in the fan category in Butchie Millmeyer. Everybody at I-80 Speedway knows Butchie and Nancy, his wife, were fixtures up in the top deck down in Turn 1. You're always welcome to stop by their deck, say hello. But huge race fans. They used to follow a lot of Busch All-Star Tour races. Last several years, they've gone to Arizona to races in the winter and whatnot. But Butchie had a long fight with Parkinson's disease and lost that this past weekend. So we're going to miss him around the racetrack. And then,
the good news is that fight is over, and he doesn't have to battle with that anymore.
He's pain-free. He had a lot of suffering for a lot of years, but he fought hard and stayed around and made a lot of happy people for that time.
Absolutely. And then there was one more passing that I got a quick note to follow that up for last night's results.
Another local legend, Johnny Sathoff's mother, Norma, passed away this past week. And everybody in the racing community knows Johnny. And Johnny, we're feeling for you, just like we are for for Nancy with Butch's loss. We're feeling you for your mother's loss. And it really ironic that it was so close to Father's Day.
And last night at Eagle Raceway, it was a very, very emotional night as Johnny charged to the front and took the lead with about 8-9 laps to go in the modified race and was able to hold off Mike Densberger, Jordan Grabowski. And to say you're holding off those guys is something, a feather in your hat. Now, it's probably something that someone like Johnny Sathoff doesn't have to hang on his mantle because he's held off a lot of really talented guys. But in his age and in their age, they're at the peak of their career. I think he's on the downward slide. It was really awesome to watch. He didn't walk into that win. He deserved it 100%. Unfortunately, he crossed the scales 10 pounds light. Yeah. And I'll tell you one thing. Johnny didn't make a single excuse. He didn't throw a fit. He didn't go to Facebook, as far as I've been able to tell. He didn't blast the racetrack. He came across 10 pounds light. He tried to find 10 pounds as he went across again, and he went through the mud, but he wasn't able to find it. So he was disqualified. Mike Densberger ended up getting the win, but he took it like a true professional. He didn't go to Facebook and rip the track. He didn't scream conspiracy theory. He didn't scream that the scales were wrong because he was the only guy all night that went across light. Unfortunately, it wasn't a story to be told. He totally deserved that win, but you're 10 pounds light. You're disqualified. That was the night last night. There's a lot more. If we've got time in Turn 4, we'll recap some I-80 Speedway and Eagle Raceway. But right now, let's talk about the Michigan race results, and we will talk about that real quick, and then we'll head over to line number 1, and we'll talk with Anthony Ainsle to get that Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series recap. Real quick, a rain-shortened race. Clint Boyer ends up wrestling the lead away from Kevin Harvick. Boyer with 2 tires, Harvick with 4 fresh. Boyer was still able to hold him off for quite a few laps and ended up getting the lead.
Well, he'd have never held him off at the beginning if he hadn't been his teammate. Harvick wasn't going to wreck the first and second place cars, as a teammate. If it would have been somebody else, he might have pressed it a little harder and driven him a little harder and probably prevailed. So
Boyer ends up getting his second win on the season. Harvick has to settle for the bridesmaid, which we don't say much this year. Kurt Busch comes home third. Stewart-Haas Racing, top 3 finish. Boy, you can't shake a stick at that. Kyle Busch comes home 4th. Paul Menard 5th. Keselowski, Logano, Blaney, Elliott, McMurray round out your top 10. Rough days for Matt Kenseth, who finished 33rd. Daniel Suarez 30th. Ricky Stenhouse 29th. A lot of Pickham's contestants took Kyle Larson, who had a little issue with an exit at turn number 4 and destroyed the front of his car, so he finished 28th. Also, Casey Kane 23rd. So Jimmy Johnson 20th. We thought maybe we were seeing a resurgence of Jimmy Johnson after a good last couple of weeks and maybe some Chevys that were able to make some speed, but that seems to be a different story after the results at Michigan. So once again, Clint Boyer gets his second win on the season, and he takes home the day. And I think he takes the record for the best tweet post-victory on Monday morning. If you haven't seen it yet, go find his Twitter page. I guarantee you will LOL. Let's head over to line number 1. Let's talk with the voice of the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series, a man that has been to Kansas, and then to Iowa, and now he is probably resting comfortably in his bed in Lincoln, Nebraska.
And he's also a year older.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday. When was your birthday, Mr. Anthony?
Oh, it was back on Friday when we went down to Kansas City.
I had no idea. I do apologize, buddy. Happy birthday to you.
Did you get your Social Security filed now?
That's all right. I know a lot of lot of people don't like to work on their birthdays, but then there's me, and when announcing is that fun, it never feels like work.
Yeah, let's not try to count what we do as work. This was pure pleasure, and I think you got the best birthday present of all time. Maybe not of all time, but you got a pretty good birthday present heading down to Lakeside Speedway and watching the Malvern Bank late models battle out.
Absolutely, it was a great night of racing down there, and of course, had a few of our guys from the Mod Lights come down there and challenge their drivers, and had a great night all the way around. Of course, we had about 25 cars for the Malvern Bank Series down in Kansas City, so great field of cars there. That was a little bit on the lower side in terms of car counts, but nonetheless, we saw a lot of great racing down there. But Kyle Burke going from wire to wire down there in Kansas City to pick up his 80th Malvern Bank Series win. That was a very dominating performance there from the 14.
Then you moved on Saturday night at Adams County Speedway. I haven't got to see any of the results, so if you could take me through them real quick. Not real quick. We've got time for you, but let's walk through what happened down at Adams County Speedway.
I'm still trying to process what happened last night. I know our buddy Chris Krug. He actually texted me after the races last night and asked what happened. I'm still in shock what happened. Corey Zeitner, he was the talk of the race. He ran a flawless run, driving Al Humphreys number 6 last night because Corey's his number 26 that was normally Mel Zeitner's car, I believe, broke a radiator in a water pump last night out of Kansas City, and he pulled off early. Corey started on the pole last night, was dominant all race long, and then the final lap came around. He was going into 3. He was one corner away from a huge surprise victory, and then he spins out going into turn 4.
No.
And bring it. I'm not making this up, Dan. I'm telling you. I'm telling you straight from my eyes. I think myself included and the entire crowd, we collectively lost our minds. Corey Zeitner spun out in turn 4, coming to the checker flag while leading, and he brought out the final caution. He dropped all the way back to 15th when everything was all said and done, and it went. And then in the 2-lap shootout, Jason O'Brien goes to victory lane, his first ever Malvern Bank Series win. I'm still can't believe what happened there, and
Wow.
It was such a heartbreaking race there for Corey Zeitner.
Was there a lap car involved, or anything
No,
like
he
that?
Was all on his own. I think he said from what I think one of Kyle Burke's fans was watching there as well. He told me a little bit that either that or I think it was Mark Wright, the owner of Bill Layton Jr.'s machine. He said he drove in a little deeper going into 3 than he had the last couple of laps, and just lost the handle on his own accord.
That's a heartbreak.
Well, was somebody pressuring him from behind? I mean, was the second place
car? He had about half a straightaway lead, and a half straightaway lead at Adams County. That is a huge advantage.
Yeah.
And it was just a sad deal. I mean, I haven't felt that sad at Adams County since was it a few years ago? J.C. Wyman, he had the lead at about the halfway point. He jumped the cushion in turn number 3 and actually barrel rolled it while leading. That was a few years back. So that was a tough loss there to watch for Corey Zeitner, who was on his 3rd car because was it Friday at I-80 during the I-80 Dirk Classic, which is that USAC show. Corey broke his rear end very badly in the closing laps of that race. Went to Mel Zeitner's car for Harlan the next night. Did post a 5th place finish there, and then broke the machine down in Kansas City. So it's been a tough. June has definitely not been very fortunate to Corey Zeitner, but a big kudos to Al Humphrey for letting Corey drive his machine last night, and it was just a shame he couldn't park it in victory lane.
Looking at the points, Ben Schaller still has the points lead as Kyle Burke is slowly creeping in, just 8 points behind. I want to go back to Friday night at Lakeside Speedway when somebody mentioned to me, hey, Kyle Burke won at Lakeside. I said, oh, gee, no kidding. Because Kyle, I mean, it's a track that is pretty new to majority of the field for the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series, but that's like Kyle's backyard. I-80's could be counted as his home, and Lakeside could be maybe his summer home.
Well, no, Donovan would have been his summer home, but
yeah, a little bit. Of course, Kyle's raced out there with multiple other late model series, but advantage or not, little thing to think about, that was Kyle's first Malvern Bank Series win out at Kansas City down at Lakeside, and also Kyle became the first driver in the Gales Gold Rush Super Late Model Series to reach the 10-win mark after Kansas City. But yeah, of course, Burke's been down there multiple times with the MLRA, I believe the WDRL, the old defunct WDRL series. But yeah, Malvern Bank Series, that was his first ever time winning there at Lakeside, and now we had our fourth different winner down there in Kansas City.
Wow. Then you guys take a little bit of a break. You'll be back in action Sunday, June 30th at Junction Motor Speedway. Saturday, June 30th at Junction Motor Speedway. And then you have about 20 days to prepare for the biggest 3 days of racing. That's got to be the biggest 3 days racing in your of your season, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's always my favorite weekend. Of course, after we go to McCool Junction, and I think one guy that'll be looking forward to that one, I think, will be Tad Pospischel. Last year, I believe Pospischel won 2 out of 3 visits out there to McCool's Junction, so hopefully the defending champion can get his season turned around out there. And then, of course, we go out to I-80 for the Silver Dollar Nationals, and man, that's going to be a big Thursday night show. It's going to be the Go 50 makeup along with the Malvern Bank Series, 5,300 to win. Plus, we get the modifieds for their makeup show from the Go 50, and then, of course, that 10,000 to win 50-lap main event for the Lucas Oil Series. And then we turn right back around for the double heat qualifiers on Friday night, and then we get ready to go for the 53,000 to win on Saturday night. Well, it's going to be one heck of a weekend, and I can't wait to get out there.
And it is, you really can't state it too much. It's going to be a big weekend for a lot of those drivers. Kyle Burke has struggled this season. So has Tad Pospischel. Ben Schaller has come on really strong. I think Andrew Kaziski is starting to show his cards. He's been very strong the last 2 weeks at I-80 Speedway. But then you got Bill Layton, Jason O'Brien. All of your top 10 could easily stick their nose into victory lane and get that 5,300 to win on Thursday night.
Well, definitely. Of course, you mentioned Andrew Kaziski and Bill Layton Jr. Both of them having pretty decent weekends. I believe Andrew Kaziski pulling off a top 10 finish down at Lakeside, and then finished second last night out at Corning. Of course, Bill Layton Jr., he had a great weekend the last 2 days. Finished second out at Kansas City, and then finished third out at Corning. Jason O'Brien had a good one as well. Of course, third at Lakeside, and then the surprise win out at Corning. And then a few of the Iowa guys that we've seen come on to the Malvern Bank Series a little bit had a couple of great races. Justin Kai came off of the fourth place finish down in Kansas City. And then Charlie McKenna, he was a surprise entry down in Kansas City, scored his career best. He scored his only top 5 finish with the Malvern Bank Series. So I think I'm going to be expecting a really interesting field for the Malvern Bank Series. And of course, with that Knoxville race looming, so far we have 11 drivers eligible to go to that Knoxville race in September. It's going to be a great show there when the final races start to roll in.
SLMRseries.com for more information. Again, you can see him at Junction Motor Speedway on Saturday, June 30th, and then kicking off the 8th Annual Silver Dollar Nationals at I-80 Speedway for 5,300 to win. Anthony, enjoy your Father's Day. Make sure to give your father a big hug. I know he does a lot for you, as most fathers do for all of us kids.
Absolutely. Of course, I can't thank my dad enough for logging so many miles, and I think we actually do have one more race today. I think we're heading out to Lexington for a race, so it's going to be a quick turnaround. But I can't thank my dad enough for all the support he's given me, and can't wait to get back out there again.
All right. Thanks a lot for calling in, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you next time.
Anthony Ainsle, the voice of the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series. We're going to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 2. We'll sit down with track president David Hyatt of Iowa Speedway. We'll be back here on the front stretch. This week's young gun on the front stretch is Sport Compact driver Kasha Hall, who's about to start her 3rd season as a dirt track driver. For as long as she can remember, Kasha's been in love with dirt track racing. Whether she's in the grandstands with her friends and family or in the pits with her dad, she's loved every second of being at the racetrack. Kasha finally put the fire suit on and became a driver in 2016, where she won Most Popular Driver and finished 9th in the points at Eagle Raceway last season. While Kasha would love to finish in the top 5 this season, she's more focused on having fun and spending time with her father at the dirt track. Outside of racing, Kasha enjoys trap shooting while going to school at Lincoln Northeast High. Next time you're at Eagle Raceway, keep your eye out for the 92K, Richard's Machine, Bob's Auto Body, Kozak Farms, Moonlight Ranch Sport Compact driven by Kasha Hall. Thanks to Craig Kelly of Ansara Kelly & Sewell Personal Injury Attorneys for his support of this week's Young Gun on the front stretch.
For almost 70 years, Ansara Kelly Sewell have been Nebraska's premier personal injury firm. Race drivers, fans, and their families have been calling Sunset Speedway's Craig Kelly for over 30 years. The IKS firm focuses first on your healing and appropriate medical care, then they focus on getting you great results. Craig Kelly and his experienced team at IKS stand ready to handle your injury claims in both Nebraska and Iowa. If you or a loved one have been injured, Google Craig Kelly or call him at 402-391-4000.
Every race car driver has run into the same problem. It's well past normal parts store closing hours, but you need that one to finish your car. The guys who brought you White Knuckle Racing by the River bring you Joe's Karting Racing Parts and Tire Store. Open until 10 p.m. Monday to Thursday and open until 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. A parts store that fits your after-hours schedule, and you can turn a few laps at Joe's Karting while you're waiting for your part to get pulled from their warehouse. joeskarting.com for more information.
Dan and Dirk are rolling into turn 2 with a little attitude on the front stretch.
Again, we want to say a big thank you to Archer Purdue Auto Sales for bringing us the live show today for the front stretch. Now, yesterday was a little bit of a busy day for us. We got up a little bit early.
Great day, though.
Oh, God.
Great day.
I wouldn't have traded it for much.
I think it's our best road trip. I really do.
I agree. I absolutely agree. We didn't spend much money. We got to eat some pretty good food. We got to talk to some really cool people. And then we got to come back. I got to come back and play in the dirt, which I really can't beat that. And speaking of one of the people we got to sit down and talk to, Jimmy Small was always a favorite to have on the show. Really energetic, charismatic, innovative guy that has recently stepped down as track president from Iowa Speedway. And in his place came David Hyatt, who I was really personally excited about because I'm obviously being a radio guy. I'm very excited about a radio guy being in charge of a track because I think radio guys are just naturally creative and they'll push the barriers a little bit and then they'll find good ways to execute things.
I mean, if you're out there and you're listening and you recognize the name David Hyatt, you've heard him if you listen to MRN at all, along with doing some announcing work. He was also the man in charge of that place for the last 20 years. So
yeah, they gave him a lot of credit for the things he did. And we were trying to run the math in our head. He had to have gotten that job mid-20s to early 30s. And to be handed the general manager position of a major radio network like that and to run it successfully for 20 years, I think Iowa Speedway is in terrific hands.
Well, one thing I learned about it yesterday when he told us that ISC owns MRN. I did not know that. So that was news to me. And ISC, if anybody that doesn't know, is an arm of NASCAR. NASCAR is solely owned by the France family, as David said. And ISC is majority owned by the France family, but is a publicly traded company. So you can go out and buy stock.
And they own, I think 12 or 13 tracks on the circuit? Maybe
12,
14?
I think. I think it is 12.
They own a bulk of the tracks. And then Speedway Motors owns the other bulk, and then there's 2 or 3 independent tracks.
Right.
And Iowa Speedway is one of those independent tracks on the National Touring Series schedule with the Xfinity and the Truck Series. But they're not technically owned by ISC. They're technically owned by NASCAR. Yeah. Anyways, we're getting a little bit sidetracked. We were able to sit down with David, and we actually sat down with him for about a half hour, 45 minutes, had a great conversation, and we kicked things off by asking him how his journey brought him to be the president of Iowa Speedway.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been around the sport for close to 30 years, but I started when I was 9. So, back before child labor laws were, as strict as they are today. I actually grew up in southern West Virginia, and like any little kid who has big dreams, I wanted to drive a race car. And when I was about 14, I convinced my dad that we needed to build a hobby stock car and go dirt track racing. And he finally got on board with it. I convinced him, and the dirt track nearest our house shut down. And the alternative wasn't very good because the next one raced on Friday nights instead of Saturdays, and my dad worked Friday evenings at the coal mine, and it was an hour and a half further away. So I thought, well, I'm not very shy, and if I can't drive him, I'll call him. So it was actually racing that got me interested in broadcasting, and had the opportunity then to study broadcast, go to college, do a little of that down in East Tennessee, and went from there to work in local TV and radio, do some PA at some short tracks. And during that time, like all these old broadcast guys, and you may remember this, our Bible was Broadcasting Magazine. And we always read Broadcasting Magazine from the back to the front because all the jobs were in the back. So we wanted to find out where we're going next. And I kept looking for a job at MRN and couldn't find it. So finally, one day, I'm listening to a race. I'm off on my weekend TV job, and I'm listening to a race, and I heard a voice I'd never heard on MRN before, and I thought, how did this guy find the job? So I decided at that point I would make a phone call. I found, back in the days when you had dial information, I don't know if you guys remember
Rotary
that.
phones?
No, well, we had push buttons, but it was 555-1212. What city would you like? And I dialed up, and I got a hold of the Motor Racing Network's number down in Daytona Beach. And I called, the lady answered the phone, and I said, how do I get a job with you? And she said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to call the races. She said, you'd have to talk to our general manager, John McMullen. I said, how would it be? And quick thinking as I am, I said, how would I arrange to talk with him? She said, can you hold on? I said, sure. So at this point, I'm thinking they're transferring me up the ivory tower to the assistant to the secretary to the assistant to the president to make an appointment. Exactly. Or we have your number. Don't call us. We'll call you. And John answered the phone.
Yeah.
And he graciously talked to me, gave me some advice, and asked for a tape. I sent him a tape, and he graciously called back with a critique and gave me some more advice. Fortunately, that advice was not to go home and find another job or drive a truck or something like that. So the result was that I started doing some more PA at a dirt track, submitting my tapes to him on a regular basis. And a few months later, he invited me to a race down in Darlington, South Carolina. And it was my first credential for a NASCAR race through MRN was the Southern 500.
Oh, wow.
In 1987 in Darlington, South Carolina, so a long, long time ago, and was able to kind of hang out with the guys and start to get to know them. 2 years later, I was tapped to do some turn work with them, so called a little play-by-play. And a year beyond that, I got this offer to come to Daytona Beach, where the offices were, and clear stations. And I said, yeah, I'm ready. Well, what's that mean? I had no idea. But I did. I came down. I learned what that meant pretty quick. And we started clearing radio stations to carry our broadcast across the country. And a couple of years after that, probably about 4 years into the mix, I got a call from what we called Across the Street, which was NASCAR. And this was at the end of 1995. And Al Gore and I were just to start inventing the internet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good
And
deal.
I got the call, and they said, hey, we'd like you to come and do this new endeavor for us. We're going to have a website. Like a website? Wow. I said, dude, I don't own a computer. And they said, we can fix that. I said, okay, but I've not done this before. We think you can. I said, okay, if you think I can, so do I. So for the next 2 years, I launched and operated what is now a little website you may have heard of. It's called NASCAR.com, and had the opportunity to do that for a couple of years, and got it launched and up and running. We literally had about 7 weeks to launch the first iteration of what we then called NASCAR Online. And I ran that, and then Mr. McMullen, who had hired me at MRN, decided to go a different direction, and I got a call and said, hey, would you like to come back across the street and do some work at MRN again? So I said yes. That's that weak moment where they gave me the keys, and I stayed there for the next 20 years.
Good deal.
And during that time, obviously, I traveled around to a lot of races, did a lot of broadcasts, pulled a little executive privilege once in a while, and continued to call some races when I could, but tried to grow the business as best we could. We, in the middle of that, relocated it to North Carolina, and Several months ago, we started looking at an opportunity here. There were a couple times in my past when I've had a chance to look at potentially going to a racetrack. And it's good to know that MRN is kind of a sister company to NASCAR.
Right.
MRN is owned by a company called International Speedway Corporation, or what we call ISC. And ISC is publicly held but majority owned by the France family. NASCAR is wholly owned by the France family. So bouncing back and forth between those companies, not necessarily a bad thing, still in the family, as it were. And they started talking to me. I looked a few years past of perhaps going to another racetrack, and it wasn't right at the right time. And at the end of the day, this one was. We loved the idea of it being, I say we, my family, we love the idea it's a short track. And I love short track racing and short track. I like all racing, but I have a special affinity to short tracks. And hey, this is the fastest short track on the planet.
Right.
So, that's probably more than you bargained for when you asked me that question. But
I knew what I was getting into when I asked that question to a radio guy.
Well, so a few months ago, I showed up with my overcoat and got here in Iowa, and my dad always told me that all these upper Midwestern states said, hey, there's nothing between that place and the North Pole but a barbed wire fence. And come through April, I was beginning to believe him, and then all of a sudden it became summertime, and here we sit this morning expecting a high of about 95 later today, but the good news is it's going to be dry, and we're going to be able to race.
Well, it's a good little community. We're excited to have you, and I'm especially excited because I think as former key holder to MRN, I think you've had a good opportunity to go around and see how other tracks are running. Jimmy had a great opportunity to bring in some new fun things, and I think he brought in some young creative ideas, and I think you seem to have a track history of knowing how things can work, that if you come up with an idea but you know how to execute it to make sure it's a successful venture.
Right, thank you, I appreciate that, and that's the thing, you just kind of think it through. Jimmy did great work. I tell you what, I've inherited a fantastic staff, and hats off to Jimmy and the team that's here for the team that he built coming in. There are a bunch of very smart young minds who are working here, and that's fantastic because that's the demographic that we also have to talk to. We're at that stage as an industry, as a sport, where we've got a solid base of core fans, but they're getting a little older, and as they grow up or grow older and go to fewer events, we need to make sure that we're doing what the next generation comes in. I mean, if you think about it, today's NASCAR is not your dad's NASCAR. Tomorrow's NASCAR won't be your NASCAR. So we've got to make sure that we're adapting as we go. And I think you can see that pretty readily as you see the progression of race cars and even sponsors who are involved in the races, the technology that's come into the sport, and how different it is from back in the days when when Winston, for example, first came into the sport.
We push this kid stuff to the limit.
Right.
I mean, when we get on and start trying to sell tickets for Kansas Speedway or for over here, we're like, look, you guys can go over to Iowa Speedway. Dad can buy his $30 ticket, and he can take his 10-year-old son in for nothing.
For nothing. And I'm glad you brought that up. Kids 12 and under, free for every event that we do with an accompanied adult. But you think about that. Where else can you do that for a major sporting event? All kids 12 and under with a paid adult comes in free, and to your point, our ticket prices are affordable. And when you think about that, if you're buying for 4 or 5 adults or some teenagers along the way, we've got payment plans. We're going to work with you. You want to give them for Christmas? That's a fantastic Christmas gift. And of course, today is Father's Day. So if you haven't thought of what you're going to get Dad, and the mall's closed this morning, by the way, so come on out, because we still have tickets starting at $20 that you can come in here today, and you only miss one race because we had trucks, but you can still get season tickets. Our season tickets, 6 races, 3 big weekends, start at $99. And we have concerts between all those races. So
Absolutely, the concert series here is awesome enough.
Yeah. That Napa concert series, I was impressed when I saw that we had that. When the opportunity came to move out here, I'm like, oh, this is going to be really neat. Survivor last night, then Ted Nugent is coming up in a couple of weeks, so the Nuge, and I may have to bring a guitar out and see if I can trade licks with him along the way.
When you take this job, you've probably got some ideas that you want to unfold and roll out to the Speedway. Is there any of them you can give us an idea on, or are we just going to have to sit and wait?
There's a lot of ideas stirring, and obviously we got to take stock of what we have. I tell folks all the time, my first order of business coming in is don't mess it up, because we got a good thing here. And let's look at what we're doing well and what we're doing right. And we hear, requests all the time of what people, really want to see here. And we understand. And there are a lot of dominoes that have to fall behind the scenes to make certain of those things happen. So at the end of the day, we hope that we're able to expand the level of racing that you see here. And in the meantime, things that we want to do is figure out, A, how to keep the racing really strong, really good. And then secondly, make sure there's a great menu of racing that's here. And then start looking at how can we make some alternative uses of this place. Well, we've got a big piece of land here, and we've got a great infrastructure. Last year, the team did a concert with Metallica here. It went pretty well. And I've seen the pictures from it and heard some of the stories from it, and it was maybe we don't do Metallica again. I don't know. No, they actually went really well from what I'm told. So, but looking at opportunities where when you think, what can you do with a big piece of land? And there's a lot of events that go on in other places that, as we scour around, I've always been told, look, there are only about 4 original ideas. We just all recycle them in different ways. And we're gonna, we've got some new things to try. I think the coolest part about what we do is that we're owned by NASCAR. And as a result, we get to be, for lack of a better way to say this, NASCAR's test kitchen. So I think we'll get to try some things here that, as NASCAR has started having, a little more open dialogue with drivers and car owners and track operators, that we'll be able to implement some ideas here before and test them, and before they get implemented at a higher level, and we can all then claim some firsts that are here that we may not have been able to see before.
I've always said, since the first day I even came here, just as a fan, that this is the perfect mesh between a dirt track and a asphalt track. Even though it's obviously all asphalt, you walk up to it and it doesn't have the grandiose that is a little intimidating to some fans.
Yeah.
That you walk, I mean, it's a lot like going to Knoxville and to some of these other racetracks that are very well funded, and they're able to add some certain amenities. But then you walk out and, I mean, the backstretch isn't near as far as you would expect.
Right.
And you get into perspective, and there's a tough place to find a bad spot, a bad view in this track.
You can't. And, one of the things, I'll tell you a little story you may or may not know, Rusty Wallace designed this track. And, the only active racetrack designed by an active driver, specifically, not as, hey, I wanted it to look a little like this or that, but just from scratch on how he wanted the competition to flow. And among the things was not just how cars ran on the racetrack, but how fans could see it. So they laid it out, and Rusty was making trips out here to check the progress of the track and drive the grading and make sure that all the base was laid in the way it was supposed to be. And he came in one day, and he comes out of the grandstands. We're kind of down in a little bowl here, and he comes out to the top of what is now about halfway on the grandstands, and he looks over and he says, points to the base of turn 2, right outside the tunnel. And he said, "What is that?" There was a building. And they said, "Oh, that's the infield care center." He said, "You got to move that." So, "What do you mean we got to move it?" I said, "I never agreed that you could build he said, "You can't build there. There's going to be action in that turn. People need to be able to see it." So they brought in a truck. They put that building they had just built up on rails, put wheels under it, moved it halfway across the infield. It now sits right in, kind of catty-cornered behind this building and the scoring pylon here at the racetrack, and had to find the other place for it and then build the rest of the infield around it, because Rusty said, if you can't see that spot, then that's a reflection on me, and I want fans to have a great time when they come here.
That was David Hyatt, new track president for Iowa Speedway, joining us on turn number 2 during the front stretch. Again, you can get your tickets today for today's race. You can still get them by going to iowaspeedway.com. You'll purchase them through will call, and then any of the ticket booths can print your tickets. It's always a little bit confusing of trying to figure out when you get to these big tracks which window I go to for my will call tickets. David said it. I ended up having to cut it out of the interview, but you can go to any one of the ticket windows and print your will call tickets. Again, we can't press it enough. Fathers get in for adult tickets. You can get in as cheap as $20. And let me just tell you, I don't like talking about this point because it shines light on a little bit of a scab for the sport right now, but you can buy the cheap ticket and move anywhere you want to in that track. It's probably going to be at about 45 to 60% capacity today. If you don't like your seats, there's no sense of paying for the higher up. Now, if you want to go pay for the VIP tickets, the Newton Club tickets, that's a whole nother experience, and that's something you should enjoy. But kids get in for free. 12 and under get in for free today.
With a paying adult, you get one child
Yep.
in. So, if mom wants to surprise dad and say, hey, let's go for a little bit of a road trip and throw the kids in the car, you're going to get a couple kids in with mom and dad for free. You can't get up into the VIP with the kids for free, but they can get in to the regular grandstands. They do have some very good seats. They've got some very tall grandstands. It's just like any other racetrack pretty much. You don't want to sit in the front row, but, sit halfway up in the stands. You'll be able to see plenty of action. The way that it's laid out, you should be able to sit in the shade because the sun's going to be behind the main part of the tower, and it is a very good racetrack. I don't know if I watched a truck race last night when we got back, where Dan went to Eagle, and great racing, very good racing.
The Xfinity Series and the Truck Series always put on a great race there when there's not a Cup driver. Unfortunately, Cup drivers put butts in seats. So the truth of it is you're going to be in line for a great race today, especially with as hot as it is. That track is going to be slick, and drivers are going to have a lot of issues keeping the car underneath of them.
No Cup drivers today. They all decided to go ahead and take their weekend off, and Dan and I were actually hoping that maybe Dale Jr. would come down and support his team, since he didn't have to go somewhere and do any television type stuff. But then we realized it was his first Father's Day as of, just a couple of weeks ago. So, we figured he probably wouldn't be there, but no signing.
Today's Xfinity Series race, the Iowa 250 presented by Enogene at 3:30 Central Time. That's 3:30 local time. You can catch the broadcast. I believe it is going to be on FS1 this afternoon, 3:30. They'll probably start the broadcast at about 2:30 or 3 o'clock Central Time. All right, we got to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 3. We'll sit down with Spencer Boyd here on the front stretch.
Hey, look at that. You're sitting on your couch playing Halo, Madden, or NASCAR while your friends are at Joe's Karting. Each lap is an adrenaline-filled, heart-pumping, white-knuckle experience that you can only get at the Metro's largest indoor karting track. Eco-friendly Honda engines rip you around the professionally designed road course at breakneck speeds. Can you reach the 14-second lap bracket? There's only one way to find out. Put the controller down and get to Joe's Karting, 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs next to Quaker Steak & Lube.
Today's live show is brought to you by Archer Purdue Auto Sales at 14227 South S Street in Omaha, across the street from the Amazing Pizza Machine.
All right, their car of the week this week, they have a 2014 Ford Escape XLT for $11,900. You can check that car out. They are open from noon to 4 today. And you can also go over to archerpurdue.com and check out their full inventory. Please go give them a look if you're out there in the used car market.
And with gas prices creeping up to close to $3 a gallon, I know it jumped up just a little bit overnight, that a Ford Escape's probably a good option for somebody that's got to have a big commute.
Yeah, I mean, the gas prices, they're almost going back to ridiculous. They did creep down a little bit here in the last week or two, which was kind of nice. I mean, we bought some reasonable gas on our little excursion yesterday, but something like that. And I do know they've got a whole bunch of those little cars that are gas misers out there, so they've got quite a selection.
I'm thinking a Ford Escape wouldn't be a bad idea for me. It means I've filled up 3 times in the last day, and I've still got to drive back home for Father's Day. So another 150 miles to put on the truck. But get over to Archer Purdue Auto Sales, 14227 S Street in Omaha, right across the street from the Amazing Pizza Machine. A full list of cars ready for your pleasure at archerpurdue.com. Give them a call today, 402-891-1100. They're open noon to 4.
Race fans all over the Midwest fill up at Quaker Steak & Lube, the official watering hole of the front stretch. Grab the Metro's best wings and catch all the NASCAR and dirt late model action on the Brickyard big screens. Quaker Steak & Lube salutes two-wheel fans with the huge bike night on Wednesdays and showcases Motor City Metal with classic car cruising on Thursdays. Party with Dan and Dirk for the Dirt Derby Truck Series race in Eldora on Wednesday, July 18th.
Get to Quaker Steak & Lube.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the front stretch.
Welcome back to it. We do appreciate everybody joining us on this beautiful Father's Day. There is a heat advisory in effect, which means drink plenty of water before you leave the house. Please drink plenty of water while you're away from the house, and make sure to drink plenty of water when you get back to the house. If you have to leave today, please head over to Iowa Speedway. One of the guys you could see at Iowa Speedway today is going to be fielding the number 76 Xfinity Series car. He is a St. Louis, Missouri native, Spencer Boyd, and we wanted to talk to him about how his career got started growing up in St. Louis.
Yeah, so grew up there in St. Louis, Missouri. Got my racing start in go-karts at I-55 go-kart track, so owned by Kenny Schrader. So big names, Wallace Country, all that. So, yeah, I moved when I was 14 to Charlotte, North Carolina to chase the racing deal. Mm-hmm. So I'd say it's about split. I'm 22 now. So
14, that was obviously a family decision, right? The whole family had to move. They didn't just say, okay, good luck, here's a knapsack, head on out.
That's right, yeah. So at 13, we were kind of racing in North Carolina, flying back and forth every 2 weeks, doing that, and kind of realized, hey, if you want to make a stab at this racing deal, you need to be there. Mm-hmm. It worked out. I'm an only child, so it was easier for my parents to move, but they did leave their 20-year jobs for me to do it. So
wow.
It's a big commitment on their end, but at this point, it's a good story looking back.
As if driving's not pressure-filled enough, now you kind of got to look back and go, man, Mom and Dad have really put it on the line for me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, outside of, the finances and things like that, my parents work regular jobs. So to be doing that, to sacrifice everything, leave their mom and dad as well. My parents were in their, mid-30s when we moved. So that was a big deal for them, too. There's no family members on the East Coast. So kind of leaving it all out there.
So when you got to North Carolina then, did you just stay in a kart for a couple of years? You jump into a late model, Bandoleros? Where'd you get started up there?
Yeah, so I started legend cars when I was 13. So we were flying back and forth racing legend cars at Concord, Charlotte, Orange County, all those fun places, and ran legend cars up until I was 17, and then I got in my late model for the first time at 18. So I kind of got started late, full-size stock car at 18 years old. Next thing you know, I was 20 making my truck debut.
Mostly asphalt, or have you gotten to play in the dirt a little bit?
All asphalt. Yeah, I ran a couple of dirt go-kart races, but I don't really credit myself to those. I was leading the race in both of them, and on the first one, lost a cotter pin, and my brake pedal went to the floor. And then the next week, we went back out to try it again, and on the engine, the gas, where the gas pedal linkage and everything, that came off. And I had never had a mechanical failure racing go-karts, 12 national championships. My dad is a mechanic. So when we had that on dirt, 2 for 2, my dad was like, you know what, we're going to stick with what we know. And I didn't mind that.
I can imagine asphalt racing is probably a little bit smoother, shock-wise on the car, that things can rattle loose a lot easier on a dirt track than it can on an asphalt track.
Yeah, it's bumpy here at Iowa for sure. I actually made my Xfinity debut in 2016 here at Iowa.
Yeah.
So I haven't been back since, so I'm excited to get out there today. But yeah, like you said, dirt racing, there's a lot of differences, and I was running someone else's cart. So just kind of getting my feet wet over there. Had some fun. We were fast, but quickly decided we needed to get back to what we knew, and I actually did road course racing. So all my go-kart stuff was asphalt road courses. I didn't actually run an oval till legend cars when I was 13.
How big of a difference was that? Was it hard to adapt to just turning left and a little bit right every once in a while?
It was pretty easy.
Yeah.
So you show up at these racetracks, like in the legend car late model days, and it's like, all right, I'm going to focus on 4 corners. I grew up on 2-mile-long go-kart tracks with 18 turns, so there was a lot more going on. Mm-hmm. And as a kid, you're trying to wrap your head around that and break down to your mechanic, Dad. Yeah, I did it all. Tag, shifter, 4-cycle. A lot of different stuff.
You said you made your debut at Iowa Speedway for the Xfinity Series in 2016. You've got a couple of more races under your belt, but does that help with the nervousness and the jitters as you're going to go out and start on Sunday morning?
Yeah.
Sunday afternoon?
I think you always have those jitters, which is good. That's why we do it. That's the most exciting feeling. But it definitely helps being here. I kind of relate this place somewhat similar to Richmond, and I've had some success there, running a little better than average for us there. So hopefully that can translate here. Got a lot of friends and family coming out to Iowa Speedway. Hopefully there's a lot of fans there, and we'll have some fun.
Yeah, the guy who actually helped design it, Rusty Wallace, designed it after one of his favorite tracks, Richmond. So he added a lot of the characteristics that he enjoyed about Richmond to this track when they were designing it on the CAD machine.
Yeah, definitely translate. You can see that. This track's just a little bit bigger, a little bit wider corners. which is nice. So he definitely took what he liked from Richmond and probably added some things that he wished Richmond had, and it's right here in the middle of the corn.
Yeah, and when you guys will come back in end of July, it'll be in full force, full gear. That corn will be up and high. But you know all about that coming from St. Louis. You've seen plenty of it in your lifetime.
Yeah, lots of walking through corn to the tree stand, things like that. I was a big hunter growing up. Still do it when I got time now. But we got a lot of great partners in the outdoor world, as well as our primary sponsor, Grunt Styles. So really fortunate to have all these guys on board. Excited to tackle Iowa.
It's got to be a nice thing for you that you not only have partners that will come on board and help support your racing career, but they're also ones that you're interested in, so you're able to enjoy their products and probably sponsor them a little bit better.
Yeah, well, with Grunt Style being a patriotic apparel company, my closet is full, so that's nice. I haven't bought a T-shirt in a while, so that's always rewarding. And then partnering with other companies like Kick-Ass Beef Jerky, you got to get behind those guys. It's delicious. And, so got some cool outdoor companies from Bear Archery to Record Rack to QVR Safe coming on board this weekend for your AR-15, things like that. So all my partners, I do a lot of my own marketing. So going after partners that I like or I think I'll enjoy that I can represent with some authenticity and, hey, free product's nice too, So it's cool to represent them, but then to actually use their product is always great.
Well, if you believe in the product too, I mean, I've done sales before. If you believe in what you're selling, it's easy to sell. If you believe in what you're trying to sell to them and that you're going to use their products, got to be a big step.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes for a good relationship, especially like Bear Archery, to have them come on board just a couple weeks ago. I already use their bows, so it was like, hey, we should try and partner up and do some social media and get them on a car at this level and things like that. But when you already use their product, it's easy to talk about, easy to sell, and then your fans are able to see that and they're like, oh, hey, he's been posting about them previously. Now they're actually buying into his racing career. That's pretty awesome. So I've been fortunate to find partners. It's a tough world we live in these days with trying to find sponsorship and racing being so financially driven, but I've partnered with a lot of great people, surrounded myself with some good folks, and it's been a good journey.
Talk about that 76 machine and getting out to Iowa Speedway. It's a little bit of a different animal, but like we talked about, it's similar to Richmond. Is there a teammate or a person on the team or maybe a friend in the pits that you're able to lean on a little bit for some advice on entry, exit, middle of the corner, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, definitely a combination of both there. My teammate Joey Gase, he's been doing this 8 years, so I chat with him from time to time. We definitely have different driving styles. I'm a pretty aggressive guy. I don't like to just sit back and ride. So, I talk to other guys like BJ McLeod, Justin Allgaier. You have your select guys that you trust that, when they say we're driving into this cone or this crack on the racetrack before I lift, you can believe them. Because, being on a smaller team with a budget, you don't want to go out there and overstep the boundaries and tear stuff up. But you definitely want to burn some battery on that phone and chat with as many people as you can, and I've been doing that all year. You
said that you're talking to other drivers about where they enter the corner, where they set up their corner, and it can determine by a crack in the pavement, and by the racing surface. That kind of blows my mind that even at the speeds you guys are going, you're able to see such a finite detail like a crack into the corner or a certain seam or if something like that. It's where you could set up your line.
Yeah, definitely. You look at all those things. A lot of the big tracks like California, Pocono, you're going to have 3-2-1 cones on the wall, different asphalt patches and things like that. So as a driver, when you're trying to learn, you're looking for those big points. And then as you get better, you can zone in on the finite details, chat with the guys that do this on Sunday. Those are the best guys. So if you can chat with those guys, or like a guy like Allgaier who has been a Sunday guy who understands what he's doing at a high rate of speed. He comes back to Xfinity. It's slower. It's easy to talk about and explain with a lot of different details, where if you talk to other rookies, we're all just mumbling words. We don't know what's going on.
Well, and it's even easier once you get on these smaller tracks with probably a mile and less. You hear every driver talk about, I got into my rhythm. And you're just almost counting in your head. You don't even look at your mark anymore. You just know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left. Your body just does it.
Yeah. No, it definitely becomes like second nature, and you just get into like a muscle memory type situation. I grew up on short tracks, late models, things like that. I didn't run ARCA or K&N. I never ran a mile and a half until I was in trucks. So for me, I relate everything back to, the short tracks on the East Coast and talk about corners and bumps and what the car felt like here and there and the amount of travel you had and things like that. That's my background. Whereas some of these other rookies come from ARCA or K&N, and they got a better idea of talking about mile and a halves, and they feel really comfortable. Me, Richmond, Bristol, Martinsville, places like that, I get excited about. We go to California, and I'm like, oh, boy, here we go. We're going to go really fast and a lot of throttle, and I'm not used to this. So driving a car on edge at 180 mile an hour is a lot different than driving a car on edge at 120. So growing up in late models, that 120 is a lot easier to adjust to, and you can do it quickly. At those higher rates of speed, you got to ease your way into it, or it'll bite you.
I like the way you put that a little bit. Like, racing's got its own language, but then short tracks have their dialect, mile and a half have their dialect, and then super speedways have their dialect. And you got to learn them all to understand what you're trying to translate to your crew chief and to your car chief, and to make the changes to the car.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everyone's program, you're right. You separate it between short tracks, mile and a halves, and super speedways, and you got the teams that dominate on the super speedways, and you got the Gibbs that dominates on the mile and a half, and then you go to the short track, and it's like, wow, you might see a young rookie win. You might see some of the smaller teams run up front. I mean, just last year at Iowa, you saw a heck of an upset with, guys in the top 10 that I think there were 5 guys in the top 10 that had never been in the top 10 before. So that's cool. It's exciting for me. It's exciting being a rookie, exciting being on a small team, that you come to a racetrack like Iowa and you stand a chance at getting a great finish.
You'll see him today in the 76 car for Spencer Boyd in the Xfinity Series. Make sure you keep an eye on him on the track. Spencer, do appreciate your time, man. Good luck in the Xfinity race.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You can see him again today at the Iowa 250 presented by Enogene, the Xfinity Series race. Go see him in person. It's just, if you're in the Omaha area, it's just about 2.5 hours down the road on I-80. You can't miss it. First thing you see is a giant airport with a lot of really fancy planes, and then the next exit is the Newton, Iowa, the Iowa Speedway exit, and you'll be in and out in no time. Want to say a big thank you to everybody that joined us today. We're going to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 4. We'll wrap this baby up on the front stretch.
For almost 70 years, Sarah Kelly Sewell have been Nebraska's premier personal injury firm. Race drivers, fans, and their families have been calling Sunset Speedway's Craig Kelly for over 30 years. The IKS firm focuses first on your healing and appropriate medical care, then they focus on getting you great results. Craig Kelly and his experienced team at IKS stand ready to handle your injury claims in both Nebraska and Iowa. If you or a loved one have been injured, Google Craig Kelly or call him at 402-391-4000.
Race fans all over the Midwest fill up at Quaker Steak and Lube, the official watering hole of the front stretch. Grab the Metro's best wings and catch all the NASCAR and dirt late model action on the Brickyard big screens. Quaker Steak and Lube salutes two-wheel fans with the huge bike night on Wednesdays and showcases Motor City Metal with classic car cruising on Thursdays. Party with Dan and Dirk for the Dirt Derby Truck Series race in Eldora on Wednesday, July 18th.
Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Dan and Dirk are live for one last corner. Give them a call now at 402-573-0590.
And just like that, we blink and today's show is over with. We got about 2 minutes left in the show. Dirk and I are both sporting our brand new front stretch trucker hats. If you want to get your hands on one, just message the Facebook page or send us an email, frontstretchradio@gmail.com. As always, Dirk and I will be out and about. You can always see me Friday nights at I-80 Speedway, Saturday nights at Eagle Raceway, Wednesday nights at Quaker Steak and Lube, and Thursday nights at Quaker Steak and Lube, and then you can catch Dirk out and about. We both got a supply of hats. We'd be happy to hook you up with some.
Yep, they are good-looking hats. They're comfortable. They are flex fit, and believe it or not, the thing actually fit my big melon, and we sported them yesterday at the racetrack, and
got a lot of compliments. A lot of people are really excited about it. I really like the simplicity of them. They're not overdoing it. They're not real fancy. It's just real simple, black with red lettering of the front stretch.
You're not going to get confused on what's going on these hats.
You can see a picture of the hats on the front stretch Facebook page. The dirt racing to come, Nebraska 360s will be in action this coming Friday night at Jackson Motorplex. And then on Saturday night, they'll be at Off-Road Speedway. This coming Saturday night, I-80 Speedway has the first ever Ultimate Demo Derby at the famed I-80 Speedway. And that's going to happen Saturday night, June 23rd. So this coming Saturday night, 5 $5 for adults, $3 for kids 6 to 12. Kids 5 and under will get in for absolutely free. Got to say a big thank you to everybody that joined us, and a big thank you to Rick Havenridge of Wealth Partners, a financial advisory of practice of Ameriprise Financial Services, for sponsoring the Pick'ems contest on the front stretch. Unfortunately, we ran out of a little bit of time today, so we'll have to get to a recap. But 1 leader, 20-way tie for second place in the 5-week contest.
Yep, and we've got a nice interview we did with David Starr yesterday at Iowa Speedway that we'll going to put on the show next week, I hope. And
that's the plan.
Always good to talk to David. We really like talking to him.
He always gives us some great insight, so you're definitely going to be in for a big one there. Plus, Gunnar Pike going to join us on the show. Got to say a big congratulations to him on getting his first win of 2018. I'm going to try to get Johnny Sadoff on the show, and Adam Golian. He's been wanting to get on the show for the last couple of weeks because apparently he's had some things to say.
It's good when we've got people that want to be on our show.
Absolutely. That's going to do it for us today. The Front Stretch presented by Joe's Karting. We'll do it all again next weekend on the Front Stretch.